So this is my first successful attempt to get into Mun orbit without touching the staging button other than the first time. It's following my rules from last time that I can set the SAS before the launch. This is my new technique. It's a two-stage approach. There is the lower first stage has its own hex. This is because I found that if you don't have a hex on the first stage, the throttle doesn't work for some reason when you hit the stage button. So here I'm playing with the camera just to show that you can see Minmus in the distance. But basically the first stage and the second stage are separated by the standard decoupler. The first stage is just a standard rocket with nothing particularly special. It's actually overpowered for where the Mun is in orbit at the moment, but that's okay because it's very inefficiently burning because it's only at half throttle. It spends way too much time in the deep part of the gravity well, very slowly wasting fuel. So anyway, I've been playing with the fuel quantities of all the various stages quite a lot. It took quite a lot of attempts to get this right. And just as the first stage burn breaks off, you'll see me switch to map view to check the insertion position. You can see the second stage appears to have a stage separator between it. That's to keep the fuel tanks separated from the top and bottom thrusters. So the technique I'm using here is that there are tiny little thrusters pointing away and pointing back, or prograde and retrograde if you like, and they're going to just cancel each other out for the majority of the coast phase. And there's going to be a little bit less fuel in the fuel tank at the bottom, so that cuts out just before the fuel tanks on the top. And you see the hex has adjusted the position to be prograde. If you were watching the roll, yaw and pitch axis, okay, so here we're just checking the orbital insertion position. We've got a nice wide orbit there, which is going to be nice and easy to go into, and we've got a 2.5 hour coast. So as I was saying, if you notice the pitch, roll and yaw as the craft was pushing its way through the atmosphere, the hex on the second stage was actually trying to point that second stage prograde, but it was firmly connected to the first stage only through friction. But it seems pretty well welded. Actually, I've zoomed in a few times, not on this take. I might show you a take in a minute. The first and second stages do bounce around a little bit, or slide around a bit, but the friction connection between the two is enough to stop the second stage hex from being able to point the craft in the direction it's trying to go. The first stage just goes vertical because there's no commands to the hex on the first stage. So we've got the second stage now on a nice little coast, set to prograde. It's got for 2.5 hours to wait. So this is where I go AFK, and we'll cut to when we've got something a bit more interesting going on. So we join with just about a minute before we hit the Mun sphere of influence. That's at 4 times speed, so it's only 15 seconds. When we do that, the camera's going to switch around, and also the craft is going to reorient itself. It's trying to keep prograde, but it's now going to be prograde to its progress across the Mun, or in regards to its position with the Mun. So that's exactly what we want. It's going to be a little while before anything else interesting happens. Nowhere near periapsis yet for the Mun, but we're going to run out of fuel in that rear tank before then, which is when it's going to start getting interesting again. So we'll go ahead and skip to that point. So we join with just a little bit of fuel left in the rear tank, and what's going to happen is as soon as that fuel runs out, we've still got the front tank burning away. We're basically going to be doing an orbital insertion maneuver around the Mun, so I'm going to switch straight back out to the map so we can watch what happens to our path around the Mun as it gradually curves into an orbit, and hopefully it stops before it gets too short and crashes into the Mun or flings us back into space. Spoilers, it doesn't, because I've tried this a million times, and this is the first time it actually got the fuel balance correct. It's actually a bit of a balancing act. I'm not really one for calculating up front, and depending on exactly on where the Mun is relative to your launch point and the exact orbital insertion that the first stage gives you, it can be a bit of a arduous task just fine-tuning those fuel amounts. But anyway, as you can see from the map view, periapsis is now being pulled down, the Mun escape is going up, the craft is slowing down relative to the Mun, it's burning in the right direction to pull us into an orbit. So I actually thought this was worth keeping in full, although it would have been very boring at 1 speed, so I've sped this up 10 times. This is basically a battle now between the orbit and the amount of fuel left in the tank. So I'm sort of imagine me sitting here biting my nails hoping my fuel runs out before the orbit collapses into a Mun intercepting one. So we're in orbit. Will it stay above the surface? It's going to be pretty close. Slow down to 1 times for the final bit. And we're just there, 29,000 meters above the surface, which is pretty close. So I'm happy with that. It took quite a lot of attempts to get that orbit. I think with a bit more fine-tuning on the fuels and getting a bit more practice at the insertion, you could probably get a slightly more circular orbit. But I've got bigger projects to move on to. I would like to see if it's possible to do more difficult things with a single staging. So I'm going to leave that there. I think I'm going to try and stick a few clips on of some of the failed launches, just so you can see how the first and second stages tend to slide around a bit. So this is an earlier launch. This didn't make orbit exactly. You can see the top fuel section is a single piece rather than split, which is probably one of the reasons why I couldn't get the fuel balance quite right. But it's essentially the same ship. In this particular attempt, I got a closer look at the first and second stage connection, and you can see more clearly how it tends to slide a little bit. The actual decouplers have been set to have 0 force, so this is just the forces from the air as it launches, and various other things. Lots and lots of different configurations. The components don't seem stable. This one is. I don't know why. I've got loads and loads of failed attempts with different configurations, but this seems to work quite nicely. And if I can figure out why, then I'll certainly post a video explaining it.